on one of the shows, Chris Charlton made the kind of following comment about Shota Umino, and I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's reflects some of the other issues that we've been feeling and others around us have been feeling this year.
Do you want me to read this section, Trish?
Yes, please. Yeah.
You got it.
I'm dying this week. I need all the help I can get.
We will have updates on the Tunnel Talk medical Patreon for Trish's condition, and we won't.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a whole updating page. You can put latest updates. Right, I'm gonna go die.
Yeah, excuse her for a moment. So yes, the commentary, English commentaries, Chris Charlton essentially said, quote, "The younger fans and the female fans might be behind Shota Umino, but a lot of the core people who come to every single event are starting to turn on him a little bit." So Smark-infested waters on Twitter followed up on this with their own comments, which Trish and I kind of both thought were interesting, where they said, "I really wish commentary would not perpetuate this. Kids and female fans are core fans. This is like Roman Reigns all over again, where one of the criticisms aimed at him was that kids and women like him, as if that is not a huge demographic that is just as valid as male fans. It sets kids and women aside as not like regular fans, which is toxic as hell, and it starts to read as, oh, these kids and women like the dude because he does finger hearts, but the real parentheses male wrestling fans focus on his wrestling, and they're more important. I know no one means any harm, but it's a very dangerous narrative. We get enough female wrestling fans aren't real fans, or female fans are only here for the hot guys as it is. Blatantly adding it into a storyline and using it in contrast to a demographic that already really dislikes Shota and could jump on this makes me uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with telling the story that Shota is losing some of the core fans who come to every show, but you can simply say, of course, he still has some fans who love him, instead of making it core fans versus kids/female fans. Just to reiterate, I do not think that commentary is doing this intentionally. I don't think they're looking to add this wrinkle to the story because they want to have a go at kids or female fans, but that's how it reads, and people who already think like that could absolutely run with it. To which Chris Charlton, who was on the commentary team, responded, "This is a good point and not well put on my part. There are demographics that are more openly accepting to Shota and especially react to his person-to-person contact, and those who will dig in their heels and resist. It was wrong to gender them, and it was incorrect for me to use the labels that I did."
So I'm not going after Chris here. Let's be clear on that. I don't want to make him a scapegoat. I don't want to send him anything. He made a comment on it. He responded to it. That's unusual in itself sometimes. So, yes. Fair play to him for that. But I do want to go over like some of the issues with this and some of the ways that I think this has been replicated in numerous places, especially over this summer. This is kind of a show tell into that. So New Japan is especially interesting because he refers to person-to-person contact. And let's be clear, they market Shota Umino to women and kids.
Yes.
He gives out the glow stick, he does all the kind of fist bumps and stuff. Like, they market him to kids. Do I think he's as over with women as any other part of the fan base? No, not particularly. I've been to Japan, I've seen the response. Their reaction seems to be mixed. You might hear men be more vocal, but that doesn't mean that every woman loves Shota Umino.
Right.
So it's a generalization there, But with New Japan, the thing about New Japan is this is the company with the highest percentage of women fans in its fan base. And this was actually referred to by the former kind of main guy in New Japan, Howard May. He did an interview with Fox Sports back in 2019, and Fox Sports noted that in terms of the proportion of women in attendance, it's around 40% of overall attendance for New Japan. And generally they were aged between 20 and 30. So that female 18 to 34 group that we talk about in the US. Yes. And he made the comments. He said, when you look at other sports in Japan, we have the highest percentage of women coming to our shows as opposed to baseball, soccer, or whatever. That's quite unique for us. And it wasn't like that traditionally. It's been happening in the last 5 years or so. We've made a conscious decision and conscious marketing as well to cater not just to men, but to be more inclusive of women and kids. So their most successful period, their growth from 2014 to 2019 was powered not by men 18 to 40, it was powered by women. Why does that never get acknowledged other than by this guy here? You know, why do we look at the growth of New Japan and just say, oh, this is great, we're in contact, all these people coming through? No, they appealed to women and they grew their base. That's what happened. That's what happened with this company. And this is why, you know, when we talk about other companies, you know, and females from 18 to 34 in particular, you know, why is Moxley a bigger draw than Bryan Danielson? I say this all the time, right? But he is. And he's a bigger draw than Bryan Danielson because he appeals to female demographics because of the Shield. He grew a 18 to 34 female demographic off that has now become a 35 to 49 demographic.
Yep.
That's why he's a bigger draw than Bryan Danielson. Why is Kenny Omega a bigger draw than Okada in the US? By a long bloody way, because we've now seen what Okada is in the US, okay?
Yeah.
Because he appeals to more than one demographic. They understand it. We've seen wrestlers understand it. Swerve Strickland understands it.
Oh, yeah.
He understands how to play to kind of, you know, to get himself over with a female fan base. Yeah, we've seen other examples of this in recent years. WWE's main roster growth in the pandemic for the short period was in female 18 to 34 with a story between, you know, Sasha Banks and Bayley.
Yep.
You know, when AEW started losing viewership to NXT in the spring of 2021 with the Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly story before he became Cool Kyle, you know, the Orange Cassidy clone. What a stupid thing that was. That was all in 18 to 34 and female 18 to 34. And they were losing it to the challenge as well. But you could absolutely see where that demo was moving across there because of that story. And sometimes it's wrestlers that, you know, this demographic particularly gets invested in. Other times it's stories, but you can see where that growth was. And it's funny because, you know, there's been this obsession with male 18 to 34 in AEW and they beat, you know, WWE in that. And it's like the first demo they ever beat WWE in was women 18 to 34. And I think this is because, you know, when they look back, they think the Attitude Era, WWF, it was all based on male 18 to 34. If you watch that Mr. McMahon documentary, I think Undertaker says it about 10 times.
Yeah.
Male 18 to 34. We're not in that fucking world anymore.
Nope.
There are so many companies in the last few years, be it from New Japan, in their main growth period, their golden age, which grew massively off women to, you know, now we're seeing it in pop culture. You know, we see it with The Walking Dead. Got huge with women. Consequently, when it was starting to kind of move down, drop with women in that brand first. They are at the bellwether now.
Yep.
And there is just this obsession with ignoring this, or even worse, to say what we like and what we don't like. Okay? So, you know, I've got a quote down, one that really annoys me, and it's not to shoot at Dave, but after the Bryan Danielson Adam Page hour match, you know, they noticed that the major growth in that match was in women 18 to 34.
Yep.
And he said women 18 to 34 of all things. And it sticks in my brain because it's just this dismissive thing that this demographic doesn't really matter or isn't vitally important, when actually this demographic tells you what's hot or not. Because they don't have that loyalty. They don't care about characters from 20 years ago. They don't have that loyalty to 2006 Ring of Honor where there practically was no women in the crowd. And I know because I have all the DVDs. I am that person. But they don't have that. They won't invest in that. So you can see what's actually hot in your product and your characters now by this demographic. And we pretend like it doesn't fucking matter. And then we get a situation like when Dynamite gets preempted against NXT the other week on a Tuesday night where they do 2,000 and female 18 to 34.
Yep.
That's when you know you have a problem. Like, you can't keep ignoring it. You know, and a lot of the part of that is, we said, people on that demo, traditionally, you know, stereotyping, but they will invest in characters that they have gone on a journey with.
Yes.
That was the same with the Shield. It's the same, you know, it was a difference between why Roman Reigns was a draw in that category and CM Punk wasn't back in WWE. That's how it works. And in AEW, they invested in guys like Orange Cassidy.
Yep.
Guys like Darby Allin. You know, you look back at the 1834 ratings in April 2021. You know, we talk about Hanger all the time, but we know that's a proven fact, right? And what has happened is every single time that you should be marketing to this demo, and this demo can cause you growth, and this demo held you up for a significant amount of time, especially last year, and then you kick them in the fucking teeth. You kick them in the teeth every single time. And now with this new story, they've got to work over the fact. I mean, you're trying to get these people back, but is it too late? Because you keep kicking them in the teeth because you want to appeal to somebody by throwing someone in that's big in male 35 to 49. Every fucking time. The highest number in this demo this year was 71,000 for the show with the Owen Cup finals in Calgary. And then it cratered. Well, no fucking surprise why that was. The week before against Chicago, one of the highest 18 to 34s for the year, coming off the back of Forbidden Door, which was headlined by 2 young wrestlers that people can go on a journey on.
Yep.
And the return of Adam Page. And then you do that the following week, and then you go into this horrible, not horrible, you go into this story that's focused on people that appeal to male 35 to 49. And guess what? Where did all the fucking women disappear? It's not fucking hard. But we seem to make it hard, and we seem to be able to ignore it, and we only care about, well, what's the men's competition? What's the sports competition? Actually, how's Survivor doing this week? How does Real Housewives do?
How did Vanderpump Rules do?
Yes. Vanderpump and the Challenge are the 2 biggest things that have ever impacted Dynamite across the years. Predominantly women watch shows. It's like you have this thing that only one type of wrestling can work. And this is the thing that AEW have got into a habit of. And it started with, Max's kind of flavor of ice cream stuff. And then you had Collision, which was one type of wrestling. Appealing, Jim Cornette's style, whatever it was called, the nickname for it. And guess what? Which demographic ran away from it quickest and never came back?
Oh, the fucking women bailed on Collision. Never came back.
And especially in that younger demo.
Yep.
Especially in that younger demo. So the thing is right, is that you can say, and you can look down on it, and you can, because I think there's an element this year especially that is particularly kind of threatened by it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's just wrestling. We're seeing it with women of football. And I listened to someone talk about how football, women don't belong with football. They shouldn't have a part in football the other month. And there's this pushback is like, this is not for you. And we see it when we discuss kind of, you see things like Tumblr, Twitter and shit like that said, or they look down on kind of fan fiction and that sort of thing. Whereas we use that to identify spikes. We can actually identify something that's going to become hot because activity and engagement
super invested in it. Yes.
Yeah. Because there's that level of investment. It's the same with the focus on Twitter. You are focusing on something that's predominantly male 35 to 49, where we have things like TikTok and Instagram, which are heavily more women. And now we're seeing, credit to AEW actually starting to get that way. You need to, Rome's not built in a day. You need to keep up with it. But it's this whole thing that we don't like the way you see wrestling because it's different from how we see wrestling. When what you don't understand is the people that get over and do the best and are most successful are the ones that appeal to as many demographics as possible.
Correct.
It's not about casual fans and that bollocks. It's about appealing to as many different demographics with your storytelling, with your art, with whatever it may be. And that's why people are successful that you probably don't think they should be. That's why Naito's more successful than half the wrestlers that you want them to be. It's exactly that single thing. And women 35 to 49 are massively important with Dynamite. As much as Collision, they say, I've heard people discuss things with WBD saying it's only male 35 to 49, they're interested. Well, Dynamite needs 35 to 49 women because that's what they get from the lead-in.
Yep.
And the longer they can hold them viewers, the higher that number is.
Yep.
So I want it. That's enough. I've had enough. It's like if you keep looking down on certain parts of your community, or you use them to say, "Oh, they don't like blood, so that's why they're running away." Ask a fucking woman.
Yeah.
Ask a fucking woman, because and don't be threatened that there's voices with different viewpoints that consume something differently that could actually bring something to wrestling to make it kind of stronger. That's what the Elite did. That's what that level of storytelling is. That was female-aimed storytelling that has actually made the product better. Yeah. And has moved wrestling as a genre forward by bringing in things that weren't traditional wrestling. That's what it's there for. Don't be afraid of it just because someone might engage with with this content differently. And definitely don't look at it and say they're not core fans. When in New Japan, they buy the tickets, they buy the merch in the majority of cases.
No desire to shit on Chris Charlton at all. And I think that's one of the things that like if you're a dude and you're listening to this and you're like, I'm a good dude, like I'm not opposed to women. Like, I think one of the things you need to think about is like, what are you doing in the way you talk about wrestling and like your daily wrestling, ecosystem to make yourself and to be aware of women wrestling fans and to be like, cool with them, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Like, like it's one of the things like, I'll do it. I'll challenge any guy listening to this podcast to like take a deep second and think about like, hey, am I doing anything that could be a turnoff to women I'm engaging with in my community? Like, because it does happen on a regular basis, and it's stuff like this that Chris Charlton's doing where he's, again, good guy, not really thinking about it, but falling into this sort of perpetuation of a stereotype that he may not even be aware that he's doing. Right. And I think that's the kind of thing that's important because, you know, sometimes you see this happen where, you know, people attack something that you like and you get like sort of knee jerk overly defensive about it. And I feel like we saw this a lot this summer a little bit where people were like, this Danielson stuff is boring. There's no story to it. And the knee jerk reaction was like, you don't need a story. Right. And it's like, well, no, I don't need one. Like sometimes cool matches for the sake of cool matches is awesome. But like, it's not enough to sustain your wrestling promotion or 5 hours of television a week. I'll tell you that much. Like, nobody's tuning in to 5 hours of television a week for just cool matches. Maybe a half hour, maybe 45 minutes, but that's about it. So, like, you got to come up with something. And this sort of perspective that like any kind of storytelling is bad or like we shouldn't, you know, care. Like nobody's asking you to do NXT level bullshit or like Dom Liv and Rhea bullshit, right? But there could be some kind of like, you know, storytelling going on that pleases a giant, as Trish said, a much larger segment of your audience than what you're currently appealing to.
Exactly. And, you know, I do want to say that there is a large segment of the community that have really embraced us and really embraced like things like tunnel talk.
Yes.
You know, the fact that there's a tunnel talk thread on the board is it makes me dead happy and seeing people interact with it, because that is people looking for different viewpoints, looking, you know, for different ways to consume content, and rather than hearing the traditional voices and seeing how other people feel about it. And you might not agree with everything. I don't agree with everything Wade Keller says, probably most of it, but I listen to him every week because it's different from how I see things. And, you know, there's no point in just listening to things that affirm your viewpoints.
Right.
We don't learn or progress from that, you know. So I do think it's really important. So I do want to say, as much as we might say, you know, you need to listen to other people, but for those that have kind of embraced that, thank you, because I think that's so important for this community.
Well, it's also one of those things where it's like, look, you don't have to like this stuff. And I think that's the thing that, like, you know, we sort of talked about this in other shows, but like, you know, you don't have to like the same stuff that like women 18 to 34 like. You can be like, hey, this is not for me. Like, this is, you know, I am that 2005 Ring of Honor guy. Like, I'm hardcore into that. That's cool. But like, also acknowledge that, like, you know, 75% of the show is aimed at you, and don't get real mad about the 25% of your show that might be aimed at somebody else, right? Because I feel like one of the things that wrestling fans really like to do is talk about the stuff they didn't like and get real mad about it and, right, nitpick. God knows you and I are guilty of that at times.
Absolutely.
Like, focus on the shit that you do like and talk about that instead, and stop shitting on people in your community that might like something a little bit different, right? There's, you know, the flavors of ice cream thing was bullshit, but at the same time, like, Dynamite's not going to be popular just appealing to the same people over and over again with the same thing. You know, the audience is just going to keep getting smaller.
And we've seen that, you know, we saw the focus on the Dynasty era,
right,
of all the new guys that didn't mean anything to that demographic at all.
The Dream Match era.
The Dream Match era, and we had the, you know, the NXT Black and Gold era. Fuck, do I hate NXT Black and Gold, right? Everyone thinks like we hate like Will Ospreay. Oh my god, no, I hate that style. Like,
I don't hate Will Ospreay.
No.
I'd rather watch a Will Ospreay match any day of the week than that, you know, NXT bullshit.
But like NXT Black and Gold style with the shock faces and the kick out and the unmemorable matches. I watched a indie match here the other week, and I was like, I wanted to lose my fucking mind. And someone was like, it's match of the night, and I'm like, we all have things that we hate, right? I hate that stuff. Anyway, yeah. So, but I just think that it shows that the attitude is still prevalent, and we see that a lot, and it just means we still have some way to go. And this feels like a very kind of social podcast this week. I don't think it was intentional.
No, but you know what?
But it wound me up because I read it and I thought it just shows everything that we've been talking about over the summer, and that kind of pushback because people were uncomfortable with having the way that they express content or the way others do, or just aren't, you know, willing to understand it or doesn't want to, which is fine. But that's where we're at. So.